Alright, guys, today we're going to be reacting to Germany's unexpected economic crisis. I just saw this video in my feeds and I find it kind of interesting. Since the European Union does have a very strong economy, so I'm kind of surprised. In knowing that the Germans are very conservative when it comes down to the economy, I'm kind of surprised. I'm just going to enlighten myself here. Let's jump in and see what's going on here.
As it is for big jugs of beer, sausages, and checkered history. Germany has recently become the third largest economy in the world behind China and the USA after overtaking a stagnant Japan. It's also clearly the most powerful and influential economy within the European Union, and a large driver of that economic success has been the country's ability to produce extremely high-end manufactured goods. Of course, there are the country's cars, but that only makes up a surprisingly small share of the country's total manufacturing output and an even smaller share of its exports. Germany really does live up to its reputation because it has become a world leader in a vast array of different engineered goods, from aircraft to medical devices to centrifuges used in nuclear energy. Basically, if there's something that really needs to be made right, there's probably a German factory making it. Or at least, there was. A long list of internal and external challenges have put significant pressure on German industry to the point where a lot of economists and
Why? Germany's day as an industrial superpower are coming to an end.
commentators are predicting that the country could lose its industrial dominance entirely. That is a big claim that would represent a significant shift in national, regional, and frankly global trade. But even if it does come true, it may not be as bad as it sounds for the world's third largest economy, and to find out why, we must as always answer a few important questions. So, why are economists predicting the end of Germany's industrial dominance? Why is this happening now? And finally, why could this actually be a good thing for Germany? While workers are on strike across much of Europe, it's easy to sympathise with their struggle because inflation has effectively lowered their salaries. To avoid the guarantee value loss of currency, it's best not to just keep your money as cash in a bag under your pillow, and we partnered up with the investing platform Trading212 to help you put your money somewhere where it can grow rather than lose value to inflation. Even just holding your euros in a Trading212 account gives you 4.2% interest. Since I get paid in euros but I live in Australia,
That was smooth.
I love that Trading212 has multi-currency accounts and gives you the same fantastic exchange rate banks offer each other. The exchange fee is also never more than 0.15%, which is the lowest I could find in the industry. So I can just keep my money in euros if it's not a good currency exchange to Australian dollars right now. You can use Trading212's pies to spread out your investments into multiple companies that you can choose. And if you're not sure which companies to invest in, you can look through other popular investors' pies and either copy their entire spread, or take bits and pieces and adjust it however you'd like. You don't need to be some kind of minute-to-minute high-risk trader to still take advantage of it.
Again, guys, most of the time I just like to just let their ad play through since I'm using their channel, of course, just to help them out as well.
These incredible tools. So sign up at Trading212 and use the code EE, make a deposit, and you'll get a random fractional share worth up to 100 euros. The link's in the description, or use the code EE to start investing today. As the world has opened up to more global cooperation, where goods and services are traded more freely between countries across the world, there's been a general shift towards countries doing what they do best. A country like China has an enormous and relatively industrially capable population, a decent global position for trade, and a political system that has been very accommodating of rapid expansion, so it has become a global centre of low-cost manufacturing. Singapore has a tiny landmass and a relatively small population, but it has developed a very robust political system, and it's right in the middle of the world's busiest trade route, so it has become a highly competitive business and refueling destination. These economic features lead to something called comparative advantage. No matter how hard Singapore tries, it just doesn't have enough landmass or manpower to compete with the industrial might of China. Likewise, without radical changes in the way the country operates, no international businesses will move their operations to China because it represents significant political risk. So this means that China has a comparative advantage in producing basic manufactured goods, and Singapore has a comparative advantage in producing financial services and operating as a glorified servo for the world. So long as these countries remain more or less cooperative with one another, these strengths and weaknesses are fine, because Singapore can buy cheap consumer goods from China, and Chinese shipping companies can use Singapore as a gas stop or a place to manage international finances. On an individual level in our own economies, we have grown wealthier by specialising in roles that we do really well and letting other people do the same and then just trading with one another. Most people don't know how to do surgery on themselves, but that's okay because they can pay doctors to do it with the money they've made from their own specialised job. Free trade and taking advantage of comparative advantage lets entire national economies effectively do the same thing, which theoretically should be great. Highly specialised roles in modern economies are one of the biggest reasons that the world is so wealthy today. But there can be issues at a national scale. On a personal level within economies, especially advanced and politically stable economies, there are authorities and institutions in place to settle disagreements. On a global level, there really isn't the same thing. There are mediators like the World Trade Organization and the UN, but if a country decides to cut another country off from trade, then short of declaring war on them, there really isn't much that can be done. This whole issue with holding a valuable place in global trade while not being overly reliant on it is especially important in Germany because of its unique advantages. Germany has a highly skilled workforce, especially in engineering and manufacturing disciplines, a decent geographic position within Europe, and has over the past few decades had access to very cheap energy.
Okay. So here's the thing, right? So a lot of European countries, they do depend on Russia, right? So that's an interesting position to be, right? Because Russia does have a big population, right? But then the other way around, so Russia needs quality, Europe is right here. So let's start from
This
there.
gave it a strong comparative advantage in producing high-end industrial goods. Normally when people think of gaining an economic advantage in manufacturing, they think first to lower the cost of the labour force so factories have to pay their workers less so they can make things cheaper overall. This is why places like China produce so much of the world's stuff, but as wages in China have increased, global manufacturers are looking for cheaper alternatives in countries like India. Now, Germany is home to some of the highest paid workers in the world, so on the surface it doesn't make sense how it remained competitive with cheaper global centres. But, depending on the type of manufacturing, labour costs are not as important as one might expect. Most German industry relies heavily on either highly advanced machines and tools to assist with production, or they are producing something so valuable that the difference between paying someone $2 an hour to make it versus $50 an hour effectively makes no difference to the end price. German car factories use a lot of automated machines, with just a few highly skilled workers using those machines to make 100 times as many cars per worker as they could with basic hand tools. At that scale, paying highly skilled German workers more has been competitive because the advantage came from having the machines and the experience to use them, rather than having the workers that would work for the lowest possible price. If this is compared to the type of products that countries like China typically produce, they tend to be put together with more basic tools and a lot of hands-on assembly. There are of course German cars that are also made by hand, but they tend to be extremely valuable, where the end consumer is willing to pay a premium to have a car that was hand
because they're made by hand. So there's a different type of care. It's gonna cost a little bit
built
more.
in Germany. And that right there has actually been one of the biggest factors contributing to Germany's comparative advantage in manufacturing, and that's its global reputation. An even clearer example of this would be products made by a company like Siemens. Okay, yes, terrible name to put in a YouTube video, but still one of the country's largest manufacturers. Centrifuges and everything that goes along with them. These machines cost hundreds of millions of dollars to produce and install, and it's the type of thing where not only would the reputation of German engineering go a long way, it would be the kind of thing that only Germany and a handful of other countries around the world would be allowed to produce without causing geopolitical tensions. The labour costs of machines like this are barely a rounding error, so the high cost of German workers isn't really a problem. Other input costs, especially energy, are more important for the highly mechanised industry taking place in Germany. Now, in the past, this has actually been one of the country's biggest strengths. Since the mid-1990s, it's been able to pump very cheap natural gas directly from Russia and Norway, which have some of the largest reserves of this energy source in the world. Now, clearly there have been troubles with this in the last 2 years, and higher energy costs are having a bigger impact on German...
That's what I'm saying, that things got kind of crazy now. Some tension between the countries.
Manufacturing than higher wages ever really could, and that's only the first thing pushing the shift away from Germany. The energy crisis hit a lot of German businesses particularly hard because the country is still so dependent on cheap fossil fuels to power factories that use an incredible amount of energy. But German manufacturing has been in decline well before that already, and this trend too can be explained by carefully exploring what contributed to the country's comparative advantage to begin with. Its incredibly talented and highly skilled workforce is ageing, and thanks to generous retirement benefits that are a key feature of the country's economic system, people are leaving the workforce earlier than they might.
That is kind of scary, man. Don't you think? Damn, that is kind of scary, right? So, from almost 80 million, all the way down to 70 million. I don't think that's a good projection. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section below.
Need to. Of course, on an individual level, this is fantastic. People shouldn't sacrifice the quality of their life for the sake of economic metrics. But businesses within Germany are struggling with this. Now, normally advanced economies can compensate for this by bringing in skilled migrants from countries with lower standards of living. But Germany has struggled with this too. Skilled workers just aren't as drawn to Germany as they are to places like Australia, Canada, the UK, and especially the USA. Now, part of this is just the language. In places like Australia,
Refugees from poor and war-torn countries flock into it as a heaven, while skilled professionals from outside of the European Union workers. Yeah, I mean, all the Western world's having this problem. We're all having this problem. We're just importing a lot of low-skilled workers, and we're expecting the same kind of outcome. I don't think that's how it works. If you want the same or better outcome, you have to bring skilled workers. But I don't know how a lot of these countries are dealing with this. It's just
Canada, the
complicated.
UK, and especially the USA. Now, part of this is just the language. English is a far more widely spoken first and second language than German is, but there are other factors as well. The high training standards that have contributed to Germany's strong manufacturing reputation means that even workers that want to move into low-skilled roles often have to sort through bureaucratic training certifications that can take years before they start working. Whatever the root cause, the results are the same. Germany is desperately short on manpower, with over 750,000 job vacancies in some of the country's core industries going unfilled. Gaining a
Really?
comparative advantage for the quality of its manufacturing has also meant that it was only a matter of time until other countries caught up. Today, Chinese manufacturing is not nearly as far behind German manufacturing as it once was. China is building cars, batteries, aircraft, and advanced machinery that is genuinely rivaling
be
the stuff
interesting.
coming out of Germany. Of course, China still produces a lot of garbage products, which is why it still has a bad reputation for producing subpar
A lot.
goods, but it has demonstrated that it can genuinely compete in the advanced manufacturing space as well. Today, there are more BMWs produced in China than there are produced in Germany, and despite that metric perhaps being a bit of a national embarrassment, it ironically enough highlights how one of Germany's greatest opportunities is being hidden behind this seemingly bad news. German companies can charge a premium over companies from other countries for their manufactured goods because consumers perceive German-made goods as a high-quality alternative. Whether that's true, well, just ask anyone that's tried to maintain a Volkswagen. But the reality doesn't matter. What also doesn't matter is where the goods are actually made. People just see a German company and assume the goods were made in Germany. If the predictions of German industrial decline are correct, then what the country could do is leverage its advantage of having a fantastic reputation for producing goods that are worth paying a premium for, without any of the disadvantages of actually having to produce them in Germany. Germany scaling back on its manufacturing is in many ways kind of overdue. Compared to other advanced economies, even those that
So probably they're overproducing. And Germany's material is kind of high, right? So how can I put this? So overproducing, they're not selling as much, right? So they're wasting a lot of money, right? So they have to figure out
have their
different ways.
own large domestic automakers and high-end manufacturers, Germany has about 50% more of its people working in industrial jobs. These jobs can be made more productive by giving people working them more advanced tools and technology to leverage how much work they are doing, but there is an eventual limit. A worker building a car by hand might take a month to put one unit together, whereas a small team overseeing large industrial presses and robotic assembly arms could produce 1,000 a day, and since they produce more, there's more room to pay them more, which is why salaries in advanced economies are higher. But eventually it becomes better for these workers themselves. They spend their time setting up infrastructure and training teams in other countries to do it for them. The USA is the largest economy in the world today, in large part because it's home to companies that do most of their operations overseas, but still bring in the wealth generated from these activities back on shore. Germany has for the last 3 decades decided to do stuff more in-house. But this shift away from domestic manufacturing is not so much a failure of its industries as it is taking the next logical step for their advanced economy. But that doesn't mean that there won't be major problems. If this shift away from local manufacturing does continue, it would represent a major shift in a major economy, and any
Isn't that because they have a very conservative manufacturing economy? Mostly they focus on local economy. I mean, it's not bad. It's a good thing. Which I agree. That's a good economy or it's good structure to have in your country. The money you stay there. Of course, you have to be flexible and just negotiate with other countries, right?
change
I
that
guess
big
so.
is going to have consequences. Workers across Germany are already protesting government changes to energy subsidies and tax rules, and while this is mostly directed towards agriculture and transport for now, it's a symptom of the shift in the way that business has been done in the country. Germany has historically had very harmonious relations between workers and companies, but that's because German workers are represented well by very powerful unions, and the economy itself is managed in such a way to protect workers' rights. This works while German companies need German workers, but if they can offshore a bulk of their operations, then it could undermine the highly egalitarian economic system that modern Germany has been built on. Even from the perspective of a purely cold-hearted macroeconomist, only concerned with headline economic figures, the shift away from domestic industry still could present risks. Theoretically, the workforce could move into more productive and value-adding service roles that made the country even wealthier, but the move from a role where a worker is directly installing engines into a car to something like a role where they're training a foreign team to install an engine takes a different set of skills. There's also no guarantee that this shift would directly lead to better jobs for Germans instead of just less jobs for Germans. Installing engines may not be as valuable as training a new team to install engines, but it does provide something to do so long as there are cars to be made. Once a foreign team has been trained on how to do a German's job, they don't really need the German worker anymore. Beyond that, the reputation of a country is a lot like the reputation of a company, individual, or anything really. If German companies don't maintain their standards while setting up international operations, they will very quickly lose the large group of consumers who are willing to pay a premium for a good that is at least theoretically German. Now, we did a comprehensive overview of all of the features of the...
Very, very nice video, wow. Very nice and very interesting perspective regarding the economy of Germany. I think some of these changes might come with a little bit of turbulence. However, I do think that Germany has something very good that I like. It's just the local economy. It's very strong. Local economy is very strong. And just keep things very conservative. That's not bad. They need to just change things a little bit. Everybody has to, because China is right there just making things for cheaper. And they're sacrificing a lot of qualities, even though that their quality has gotten a little better. You know, we're competing against that because people want solutions instantaneously. They're not looking for solution plus quality. They're only looking for solutions point. It's like they're not looking for the cure. They're only looking for a little bandage for their cut, kind of a thing, right? Let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. Do you guys feel the difference? Do you guys feel like some of this stuff is superficial? Do you guys think that those protests happening does have a point, or they don't have a point? Let me know in the comment section below, and I will see you in the next one.